Hi, this is Dr. Toby, your host on Health and Wellness. We're honored, we're privileged to invite you to join us on our show this week with Dr. Danielle Parker. Dr. Danielle Parker is a hospitalist in the city of Jackson, Mississippi, and she trained as a family physician. She came all the way from Chicago, settled into the University of Mississippi Medical Center, did her medical school, went on to do her residency at the Meridian Hospital program under the Rush Hospital Systems. And she's been working now at the Dominican Hospital in Jackson for about 5 to 6 years. You will be privileged to know this young lady of faith. She's a minority. She's a daughter to pastors. She's the third in a family of 5. She's a woman of dogged determination who, through all the upheavals, kept on going. You don't want to miss what she has to say. She'll inspire you, she will encourage you, and she'll bless your life. God bless you. In Jesus' name. Hi, this is Dr. Toby, your host on Health and Wellness. Thank you. Don't touch that dial. We have a great show with our guest, Dr. Danielle Parker. She's a 2-year veteran of the hospital medicine system in Jackson. She's worked as a hospitalist at some of the finest hospitals in the state of Mississippi. She's currently talking with us about how she's moved through medical school. She migrated from Chicago down here to Mississippi, went to medical school after she did a year at the Mississippi College, and she ended up in Meridian for her residency. And through it all, she says God has been faithful. Raised up as a pastor's child, and now about to set up on her own on an adventure in the great state of Alabama. You're welcome. Thank you for joining us on the show. Thank you for
having me.
Real pleasure having you. And the first time I got to know about you was through your parents, and they were very passionate about their daughter in medical school. They told the whole world, and they were so excited, and always, they were like your greatest cheerleaders. And one of the things we see with PKs, pastors' kids, is there's this presumption that you are come to faith because you grew up in the church. So a lot of pastors' kids are they're well, they know the Bible, they hang out, they know the words to use, if I may use the word, Bible phrases.
Right.
The question is there a time when a PK should have a personal encounter of his or her own with the Lord Jesus Christ? Because you can't keep running on your parents' faith forever, right?
Very true. And I mean, I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think that for me, one thing that my parents always, they always made sure that we had was a personal relationship with God. So, yes, we had to go to church. Yes, we had to go to Bible study. Yes, we had to, we were doing all of the things outwardly, right? But then also, you know, in the home, they were having conversations with us about our personal relationship with God, praying with God. What did that mean to us? What did the word mean to us? What did certain, Bible verses mean to us? And I think that that's what made it personal. Now, for me, I will say that you really don't know where you are until you're tested. You know what I mean? A lot of times. And I think for me, my greatest test probably came when I went to college, because, when you're sheltered in your own communities, I had a lot of family members in Aurora. My church family was in Aurora, so everybody believed a certain thing. Most people that I would came encountered, I encountered were Christians, so it wasn't hard to have a conversation with Christians. But when I went to college, especially where I went to college at the University of Chicago, I mean, I met many people who were atheists, who were Buddhists, who were Hindu. It was just a good mix of people, and it wasn't that they were different so far as there were some that were very directly challenging, right? Like they were like,
town in Chicago.
it would be Hyde Park.
In Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So not
Like the
University
South
of
Side.
Illinois.
No, the University of Chicago.
University of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so,
It's not in the hood, is it?
Yeah, it was.
Okay. Okay.
It was.
Okay.
It was. It's own the actual college, I would say, was surrounded by the hood, and
Okay.
then they kind of have justification. They've kind of pushed everything out now.
Okay.
But it's done a lot of changing. I was on the campus not too long ago. It definitely is a college campus now, where it used to be
Oh,
like a college in Chicago. Now I feel like it's a college campus in the
campus.
area.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I think that that's when my faith was probably tested the most. And instead of, because I will say, because God was personal to me, instead of deciding this is not what I believe because I couldn't prove things to certain people, I actually went and brought books, to see,
Mm,
to answer those questions for myself. I'm not one that believes you can't have any doubts, right? I mean,
wow.
we're not going to know everything, but I do believe that my God is bigger than my doubts. So I do believe that God can give me an answer to my questions,
Mm-hmm.
and that if I don't, just because I don't have the answer, doesn't mean that God isn't God, right?
Right.
And so I think that we learn who God is through our experiences with Him, and He has proven Himself to me in my life
Mm,
over and over again to the point where I could never doubt who He is. And so, even though I may have questions, and I'm not scared of questions because God is God, why would I be?
right.
So, I mean, I think that it's important to, that my faith has been tested by
Mm-hmm.
my life. You know what I mean? And not just what my parents have gone through, what my parents have told
Right.
me. You know.
So everyone has had challenges. I'm sure your parents would tell you they've had challenges, health challenges, spiritual
Mm-hmm.
challenges. So as an individual, are there things you have experienced on this faith journey that has actually boosted your faith in God? A testimony, for example, a breakthrough. God came through when it seemed impossible.
Um,
Something personal, not what God did for other people, but did you have a testimony from the faithfulness of God along this faith journey that you can testify about?
I mean, honestly, my career has been a faith journey. I think for me, that has been my biggest testimony because, for I would say for many reasons, whether it be self doubt or just certain outlying situations that made it difficult for me to, whether it be to get certain books or whether it be to like pass certain tests. I think for me, taking tests was always kind of a difficult thing for me. But I think God has truly blessed me in that He's kind of held me up and shown me a way of getting past those things, and showing me that this is my purpose. Right. A lot of times when we are faced with difficulty in the thing that we think we're supposed to do, sometimes it'll make us think that we're not supposed to do that thing. Right. That maybe that we're in the wrong place, but God has shown me in many ways that I was in the right place and that I had to
Wow.
push through in order to get where He wanted me to be. And so, I think for me that has probably been my biggest testimony, is that God has really kind of, he has been a builder of my career,
Right.
since I've been
So when
since
the whole world thought
undergrad.
it was over, God
Right.
opened a door
Exactly. God would
and made
open
a
a door.
way when there was no
Exactly.
way. Oh my goodness, that's
Exactly.
awesome.
Hmm.
Now, everyone has mentors. You said in the first show that you had a lack of mentors in medical school, and if you would love to change that. But I'm sure along this trajectory of Chicago, Jackson, Meridian,
Hmm.
there are one or two people you can say made a
Oh,
difference
for sure.
for counseling and
For
guidance
sure.
and,
Yeah.
you know,
I would say, I mean, I think that
your parents for
my
sure.
parents were definitely my biggest
Hmm.
my biggest mentors. And then when I think of mentorship, probably started for me in high school. I had a teacher, Mr. Lundquist, who he's the one that told me to go to the University of Chicago.
Oh,
He
wow.
like kind of pushed me in that way, and just had like a, it's interesting when you have someone who kind of sees you, right? Who kind of feels like you have potential. And I think that he kind of pushed me towards, the sciences and
Was it a
medicine.
public school?
It was public school.
Oh, wow.
It was a public school, and I was in advanced classes in the public school, and I think he just felt like I wasn't as aggressive as I needed to be in the academics, because I could do more than what I was doing. Right. In my opinion, I'm like, well, I'm making A's. You know what I mean? But he's kind of like, well, no, you can go farther than that.
Oh,
And I
wow.
think he kind of lit a fire in me to
Hmm.
do a bit more. And so I ended up going to the school that he suggested, and then from there, I think, my mentors end up being different people at different times. I had, older students, in college that kind of mentored me. And then I think when I came to Mississippi, like I said, I kind of had a hard time finding mentors like in medical school. But here or there, I think I had some people that I felt like, even though they may not have been directly in my life, you know what I mean? They just watching them from afar kind of gave me a motivation to keep going and move forward.
What do you
So,
think the role your parents played? I mean, they helped you financially,
hmm
but they also helped you spiritually, right?
very much
In
so.
medical school.
Yeah.
The prayers, the words of encouragement, I guess cooking maybe a meal or
Oh yeah,
two,
most
helping you with
definitely.
your dish, your
hmm
wardrobe maybe. I don't know what
Right.
your mom did. I'm sure she
Right.
did a whole lot of other things.
They did. I think that they kept me grounded, right? I think it's easy
Mm,
to get caught up in what you have to do and all the things that medical school will throw at you, even residency will throw at you. And I think my parents kept me grounded. I think they kept me kind of coming back to the church. They stressed the importance of a relationship with God and not losing that in the process of trying to gain something else. And so I think that that was important. But then also, of course, my mom is always cooking, so she always had a meal for me for me if I needed it. And they supported in any way that they possibly could. If I had a need for something, they were going to find a way.
did you stay at home in medical school?
I did not. So in
Okay.
medical, well, part of it, I should say.
Mm.
In the very beginning, I had my own apartment, and then towards the end of medical school, I went back home for a while. So like it was kind of a, I did it both ways.
So did your dad expect you to show up every Sunday at church
Oh yeah.
in
If I
Jackson?
were if I were not like if I didn't have something that was scheduled that Sunday, he expected me. If I were in Jackson, he expected me to be, to be in church. He did not understand if
Even
I
if you
was
had a
not.
test on Monday.
Now, if I could possibly argue that I had a test on Monday and he would be, oh, okay, but he would still be like, but you can't spare a couple hours to come to
Because
church.
your mom was telling me you were preaching at a church in Meridian. So did you
Mhm.
ever handle the pulpit here in Jackson? I think there was a church in Meridian that invited you to share something.
I
Okay.
did do we had like health fairs at different churches
Okay.
in Meridian, and I would come up and I would talk about the importance of your health and certain things that we offered to help with any type of ailments that you might have in coming to our clinic to get that stuff done. And I did, talks on breast cancer, talks on, things like that at different churches. I haven't really done it since I've been back here, but I do think that's important. That's something that I want to get back into. Um, but as far as any type of preaching or teaching, now when I first moved to Jackson, I did do like some like children church type thing. Like I used to lead children's church and stuff like that for a while. Then of course I got busy with medical school and then I left. But yeah, for
So
a
your
while I
your
did
dad
do that.
hasn't handed the mantle over, like
And no, no, he
like take the
hasn't.
ministry.
No, he hasn't done that at all. No, not. Nope, I don't think he's ready yet.
Awesome, awesome. Just when you mentioned breast cancer,
Mhm.
I don't know, is there something in your family that makes you passionate about breast cancer or
I don't have any family members that went through breast cancer, but I just know that it's something, especially in the Black community, that is actually pretty prevalent that I don't think we talk about enough.
mm,
And I don't think we talk about the importance of getting checked, getting your mammograms yearly, and then also the type of aggressiveness that happens with some of the breast cancer that is found in Black women. Right,
mm,
we tend to get a more aggressive type of breast cancer
right,
that once we find it, unfortunately, sometimes it's a little bit too late, and it requires an aggressive treatment.
mm,
And I think that that's something that we just need to be more aware of as a group as a whole. So I think that's why it was important to me to have those type of conversations, and how why we still have to have those type of conversations. And I have those conversations with my patients, even as a hospitalist, just to let them kind of go back and talk to their families about things like that.
right. Have you ever
Hmm
felt a time when your faith and your job as a hospitalist
hmm
maybe conflicted? Was there ever maybe they wanted you to do something and you felt it was against your conscience or
Um. Well, I mean, I will say the only time I feel like maybe things like that come into question for me would be when I'm dealing with hospice patients, which is something that I'm actually drawn to be honest with you. And I think the reason why is because a lot of people, especially people in the black community who have grown up in the church, have a lot of different opinions about what hospice is
Right.
and when someone should go into hospice. And if you're sending your family member into hospice or you're going into hospice yourself, does that mean that you're giving up on God's ability to heal you or to help you in this chronic illness that has been debilitating, and kind of giving people a different perspective that is not something that is questioning their faith. Does that make sense? So I think I have run into different situations like that many times where I'm trying to talk to a family about the option of hospice and how that doesn't necessarily mean that they're giving up on God being able to do something in their family member's life or in their life.
Yeah, the
You know what
word
I mean?
hospice, a lot of people think of it as you're giving up on me.
Right.
It's the end of the road.
Exactly.
You're throwing me out with the kitchen sink. I'm
Hmm.
like, so that's the impression
That,
most
right.
people.
Exactly.
So it takes a
Exactly.
lot of education and
Hmm.
time, and
Hmm.
because if that's your mental knowledge already from birth, it's gonna be hard to just change it in
Right.
one.
Exactly.
Yeah. So.
Exactly. So.
Wow. So looking over your spiritual life in the next, so you're currently traveling back and forth and working. Do you see yourself ever going into the ministry like your father did? Do you ever see yourself taking a pastorate, becoming a teacher, a preacher, apostle? I mean, just honestly, I mean, you told us earlier that God has called you to medicine.
I do
So
believe
that's a
that.
powerful thing.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
what do you think your calling in the
In the church
church
will be.
is? I mean, you're called to medicine as a physician in the body of Christ. You have a calling within the body.
To be quite honest with you, I do believe that I do. I don't know what that looks like yet.
Okay.
To be quite honest with you, I mean, I always have believed that I do have some type of work to do within the body of Christ that might not be directly or might be directly related to medicine, but I can't tell you what that is just yet. But I do feel like there is something
Well,
that involves the pulpit there. I honestly do.
how about missions? Have you tried missions?
I haven't yet,
Okay.
and it is something I am interested in. Is going on some doing some mission work. I've spoken to colleagues who do that a lot, and it's something
Hmm.
I'm very interested in. And that might be where my career takes me.
Your
But yeah.
ministry takes you. Yeah.
Hmm.
There are people who think there's a disconnect between Christianity and medicine. So, for example, I was sharing this at a men's conference, and I was telling them how to stay healthy, what to avoid eating, um, you know, if they have high blood pressure, what to do, just
Hmm.
men to men talk, check your PSA. And when I finished, the guy who took the pulpit after me just said, was a lot of baloney, and
Oh
you
wow.
should just stand in faith and believe God for your healing, and those medicines are just poisons, and if you're a
Hmm.
Christian you don't need it, and don't
Hmm.
even take the vaccine, and the COVID is vaccine
Oh
is,
wow.
I mean, I was like, oh my goodness.
Oh
But
wow.
he was one of the leaders of the organization.
Yeah.
So it was hard, and
Hmm.
I had to go back after that and talk to him
Hmm.
and explain to him why I did why I said what I said, because I know he's a good Christian guy,
Hmm.
but the way he painted the brush was that medicine was almost he painted the brush like medicine was like a satanic uh,
Right.
way of dealing with it. And I was trying to tell him that, look, God made medicine
Hmm.
for people who maybe they don't have the kind of faith you do,
Right.
because he
Right.
kept saying, I didn't take the COVID vaccine. I haven't had COVID. I'm healthy. And I said, not everybody
Not
has the
everybody has
kind of
that.
faith
Right. Not
you have.
everybody has that story.
There's some people
Right.
who don't even
Exactly.
have faith for a headache.
Right.
They
Right.
don't. They need
Right.
a Tylenol.
Right.
So,
Wow.
have you ever
So,
had that in your life where, what would you say to someone who felt that your Christian testimony is conflicted with your practice of medicine?
um, well, I mean, I think that kind of goes back. It goes far back into medicine, right? I think that those type of ideals or even go beyond our faith. I think it goes kind of with the history of medicine, right? A lot of times, the way medicine has come about has been unsavory, right? Testing on people that did not give consent to be tested on. A lot of things that that came from medicine haven't always been on the up and up. But I think that the way that I approach my medical career in science in general is that all this comes from God, right? I think that a lot of times we like to limit God in order to so that it's comfortable for our beliefs and how we live our lives. And I think that that's dangerous, right? If we don't, it's just like it's dangerous to not take the word in totality, right? It's also dangerous to say, well, I'm only going to believe God for this when I can believe God for all of it. So just like I can believe God to heal me from a headache, because I prayed, I can also believe that God created this world and created medicine and created
Right.
science to the point where he can create things that can treat an illness,
Illness.
right?
Right.
And so I feel like we limit God, for the comfort of ourselves, which is a dangerous thing. And so that's kind of how I approach it. Like I try to have a conversation with people, kind of even going back to the hospice thing. Like try to have a conversation with people in that what about your faith makes this uncomfortable for you? Because in my opinion, you're limiting your faith by saying God only works in this
In
way,
this way.
and that's not always the case. You
Right. And again, sometimes it's not their fault. They've just been taught
A
that.
certain way, right?
My
Exactly.
problem is when you are the teacher and you hold the mic and you're telling these people, don't get the COVID vaccine, don't
Right.
get the flu. It will. I'm like, and then half of them now die from the COVID,
Right.
and then I'm like, what do you tell that wife at the
Right.
funeral of her husband who died because you told him not to
Not
get
to
the COVID?
exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
you know so so
Exactly that.
so again, it's a lot of people. My reason for telling people is this: number one, if you look at the Bible talks about Hezekiah when he was healed. God told Isaiah, tell Hezekiah to take a bulrush, which is like a branch of a tree,
Hmm.
and then put it on his wounds.
Hmm. Hmm.
Hezekiah, I mean, Isaiah could have just prophesied, but God said put something on it.
Right. Exactly.
Paul told Timothy, take some alcohol for your stomach. Obviously,
Hmm.
alcohol then is not the same as alcohol now. A lot of the medicines we have are actually fermented from the alcohol process. He
Hmm.
said, you have a stomach issue, take some alcohol. And then, of course, I tell people all the time that if Jesus hated physicians, I doubt he would have picked his Luke, one of his disciples,
Right.
you know,
Exactly.
as one of. I mean, if medicine was a demonic
Hmm. Right.
practice, he
Exactly.
probably shouldn't have picked a man like that.
Hmm.
But throughout the Bible, we see God using creativity of man.
Hmm.
You know, men's ingenuity, men's
Hmm.
creativity to advance the cause. So if you
I
believe
agree.
you can walk without, if
Hmm.
you believe you can walk on water, go ahead.
Right. Right.
But don't
Right.
tell the whole church, let's all walk on water.
Exactly. I agree. I agree. I agree with
Because not
that.
everybody's on the same level.
Right.
In Nigeria in the 80s, there was a man who was a preacher, and he felt he could jump into the lion's den and tell the lion to keep quiet. So he
Hmm.
went one day, jumped over the fence, which was illegal. As
Hmm.
a Christian, you're breaking the law.
Right. Right. Right.
And then he confronted the lion and said, "Sit down." And the lion ate him up. And but he was a well-known prophet in the town, and
Yeah.
he was trying to prove to people
Hmm.
that he had power, which you don't need to. Which is what Jesus said to the devil when the devil said, "Jump off this
I was
cliff."
just thinking about
And
that. Right.
Jesus said, "Thou shalt not tempt the Lord
Right.
thy God." What am I?
Exactly.
What am I trying to prove?
Right. Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
same thing with this COVID whole vaccine. Oh, I don't
Hmm.
want to get the vaccine. I don't know, it's full of some stuff.
I don't know what people believe. Right. So
It's like,
many things. Yeah. About what it
and then when you
is.
ask them, it's like, oh, I saw it on YouTube, and I'm like,
That's not
there's no,
credible.
there's no
Right.
evidence that
Exactly.
it contains whatever
Exactly.
luciferous.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So medicine is something that we as Christians have to
Mm.
battle with,
Yeah.
because here I am talking to a men's conference,
Mm.
and I'm a man of faith, and I preach the word,
Hmm.
and the man thinks I'm speaking apostasy. I'm speaking
Mm.
I'm speaking travesty. That what I'm saying is unbiblical. And all the men there probably left confused. Oh, should I get a colonoscopy? Should I
Right.
get a prostate check? Should I get... And I told him, I said, look, you mean well, but unfortunately, a lot
Right.
of these men got confused by what you
Right.
did.
Exactly. Exactly.
And, at times you have to speak at the level of your audience.
Mhm.
So not everybody was at his super whatever
Right.
faith.
Right.
And, but anyway, so different strokes for different folks. So we're going to see that back and forth as we go
That's
along.
true. It's not
Now,
gonna.
the reason I brought that up is because your dad is a pastor.
Mhm.
Has he ever for one day said, I think this medicine you're practicing is unbiblical,
No.
it's not helping me, it's making me look like a sinner?
Right. So my dad is a pastor, but his background is physics. So
Oh,
he was a
he has a degree in physics?
yeah,
Oh,
that's from
really?
Clark College, right?
Oh,
So
wow.
and then I think he also did some, and forgive me, Father, some some college in Tennessee. But
Wow.
his
That's
background is
awesome.
physics, which is why he ended up at the Fermi Lab in Batavia. So
Interesting.
he's not somebody who is against science
Science.
and math, things like that. So I think he's the main one who probably taught me that those two things are not against each other.
Incompatible, right?
In fact, they run with each other because without God, these things don't exist. So
Right.
that has never been something that he taught me to have, is that
Mm.
those things fought each other. Now, if we got to the point where you know, science was saying that God didn't exist, and that was a whole nother
Of course,
conversation.
right.
But as far as medicine and ingenuity and having medicine being basically um, how science has taught us to deal with certain ailments in the body, he's never
Hmm.
been against that at all.
And of course, a lot of people don't know, but a lot of the scientists who discovered all
Hmm.
this, Faraday, um, what's the other guy's name? A lot of them were believers. A lot
Correct.
of those
Exactly. They
early
were all Christian. Right.
scientists,
Exactly.
Newton, a
Exactly.
lot of them were Christians.
Exactly.
And God gave them the mind to imagine what they did. And they
Exactly.
came up with laws of gravity. They gave us all this scientific
Right. So,
innovation that we
and
have
they didn't feel like
today.
they were in odds with each other.
You
So yeah, I
know,
mean
so
exactly that. So
so even the
yeah.
guy who invented the MRI was a Christian, based at Brooklyn in SUNY downstate Brooklyn. So he just passed away this year.
Oh,
So
I didn't know that. Okay.
these are people who, through the mind God gave them, have changed their world.
Exactly.
But you know what I did to him? He had a gold tooth. This preacher. So I said, "Did you go to the dentist for that tooth?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Why did you go to the dentist?" He said, "Well, my tooth was, I wanted it to make it look." He said, "Well, why didn't you just go to somebody off the side of the road and tell him to put a tooth in?"
Exactly.
I said, "You wanted a good tooth,
Right.
right?" So medicine is, you're going to a skilled person.
Exactly.
Just like your car, you want to get a good person to work on your car. Same thing. Medicine is, you want to go to a skilled person
Right.
who knows and studied the human body,
Exactly.
not necessarily to give you medicine, but to get counsel.
Right. Exactly. About how this
So the
works.
dentist
Exactly.
felt your tooth was, he needed this and he gave it
Hmm.
to you, so you're happy with it. So the same way, if somebody feels you need blood pressure meds, take it.
Right. Right.
So, friends, we're going to come back next time. This show is on Danielle Parker, our guest. You would love to hear from her next week. We'll be talking about how and what it took her to get to where she is today as a hospitalist in the medical system. God bless you. Jesus is Lord. Amen.